The Viking axe wasn't just for chopping wood. The sea axe could gut a man in seconds. And that famous sword? Most warriors never owned one. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Viking weapons dominated Europe for 3 centuries, and which ones actually decided battles. If you want to understand what made the Vikings so deadly, hit that subscribe button right now. The Viking axe. The axe was the most common Viking weapon, and for good reason. Every farmer owned one for clearing land and chopping wood, which meant every man who went raiding already knew how to swing it. Viking axes ranged from small hand axes to massive two-handed designs. But the most iconic was the bearded axe. The bearded axe had a cutting edge around 4 to 6 inches and weighed roughly 1 to 2 pounds. That extended lower blade allowed the wielder to hook shields, pull down defenses, or trap an opponent's weapon. The design also reduced weight without sacrificing cutting power, and the long handle provided leverage for devastating strikes. Dane axes appeared later in the Viking Age, featuring blades up to 12 inches wide, on hafts between 3 and 5 feet long. These two-handed weapons could cleave through shields, helmets, and chainmail with terrifying force. Huskarls, the elite household troops of Scandinavian kings, favored these massive axes in the 10th and 11th centuries. Archaeological evidence shows axes were often decorated with silver inlays and intricate patterns, marking them as symbols of status as well as tools of war. The famous Mammen axe, discovered in Denmark, features elaborate silver and gold decorations that demonstrate the weapon's cultural importance beyond mere utility. The sea axe. The sea axe was the Viking utility knife that doubled as a deadly close combat weapon. Every free man carried one, from farmers to jarls. The name literally means knife in Old Norse, and these single-edged blades ranged from 3 inches to over 2 feet in length. Small sea axes served as eating knives and general tools, while larger versions functioned as backup weapons or primary arms for those who couldn't afford swords. The blade featured a thick spine that tapered to a sharp edge, making it incredibly durable and effective for both cutting and thrusting. The lang sea axe, or long sea axe, reached lengths of 18 to 24 inches and served as a poor man's sword. These weapons appeared throughout Scandinavia and Anglo-Saxon England, often buried with their owners as grave goods. The sea axe's simple construction made it affordable to produce, requiring less steel than a sword while maintaining deadly effectiveness in close quarters. Combat techniques with the sea axe emphasized quick, brutal strikes to vital areas. The weapon's weight distribution favored chopping motions, and its single edge made it easier to maintain than double-edged swords. Warriors often carried multiple sea axes of different sizes for various situations. The Viking sword. Contrary to popular belief, swords were luxury items in Viking society. Only wealthy warriors, jarls, and professional fighters could afford them. A single sword cost as much as 16 cows, making it equivalent to a modern sports car in terms of relative value. Viking swords were typically double-edged, straight-bladed weapons measuring 28 to 32 inches in length. They featured pattern-welded construction where smiths twisted and folded different grades of iron and steel to create strong, flexible blades with distinctive wavy patterns. This technique, developed in the migration period, produced superior weapons that could bend without breaking. The legendary Ulfbricht swords. The most prized swords came from Frankish smiths, particularly those marked with the name Ulfbrecht. These blades, produced between the 9th and 11th centuries, used crucible steel technology that wouldn't be matched in Europe for centuries. Over 170 Ulfbrecht swords have been discovered, testament to their reputation and value. Viking swords featured distinctive hilts with short crossguards and pommel designs that evolved throughout the Viking Age. The Peterson typology, developed by Norwegian archaeologist Jan Peterson, classifies Viking swords into 26 types based on hilt construction and decoration. These weapons often carried names and were passed down through generations as family heirlooms. Sword fighting techniques emphasized quick cuts and thrusts, often combined with shield work. The relatively light weight of Viking swords, typically 2 to 3 pounds, allowed for fast, precise strikes that could exploit gaps in an opponent's defense. The Viking spear. Spears were the most practical and widely used weapons in the Viking arsenal. Cheaper than swords but more effective than axes at range, spears served as the backbone of Viking military formations. Archaeological evidence suggests that spears outnumbered swords by at least 10 to 1 in Viking graves. Viking spearheads ranged from simple leaf-shaped points to elaborate winged designs. The wings, or lugs, prevented the spear from penetrating too deeply and getting stuck, while also providing a means to trap or deflect enemy weapons. Spearheads typically measured 6 to 20 inches in length and were mounted on ashwood shafts 6 to 10 feet long. Gungnir, Odin's legendary spear. This legendary spear influenced Viking spear design and decoration, with many archaeological examples featuring runic inscriptions and elaborate metalwork. Combat spears served multiple roles: thrusting weapons in close combat, throwing weapons at medium range, and formation weapons for group tactics. Vikings often carried multiple spears into battle, throwing lighter ones before closing with heavier thrusting spears. The reach advantage over axes and swords made spears particularly effective in shield wall formations. Specialized hunting spears featured broader heads designed to create massive wounds in large game like bears and boars. These weapons often included crossbars to prevent wounded animals from charging up the shaft, a design that occasionally appeared on military spears as well. The Viking shield. The Viking shield was both defensive tool and offensive weapon. Constructed from lime wood planks held together with iron bands, these round shields typically measured 32 to 36 inches in diameter and weighed 11 to 15 pounds. The central iron boss protected the hand grip and could be used to punch opponents. Shield construction involved overlapping wooden planks covered with leather and reinforced with iron rim bands. The boss, or shield center, was made from iron and featured a conical or hemispherical shape that deflected blows away from the wielder's hand. Archaeological examples show shields painted in bright colors with geometric patterns or mythological scenes.
Shield wall tactics. Shield fighting techniques emphasized active defense rather than passive blocking. Warriors used shields to deflect attacks, bind enemy weapons, and create openings for counterattacks. The shield boss could deliver devastating punches, while the rim could be used to strike or hook opponents. The famous shield wall formation relied on overlapping shields to create an impenetrable barrier. This tactic, used throughout the Viking Age, allowed smaller forces to hold defensive positions against larger armies. The Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066 demonstrated both the effectiveness and limitations of shield wall tactics against evolving military technology. Viking bows and arrows. Vikings used bows extensively for hunting and warfare, though they're often overlooked in popular depictions. Archaeological evidence from sites like Hedeby and Birka reveals sophisticated bow technology that rivaled contemporary European designs. Viking bows were typically self-bows, made from yew, elm, or ash wood, measuring 5 to 6 feet in length with draw weights between 80 and 120 pounds. These powerful weapons could accurately engage targets at ranges up to 200 yards, making them valuable for both hunting large game and battlefield support. Arrow technology. Arrows featured iron points in various designs: bodkins for penetrating armor, broadheads for hunting, and barbed points for maximum tissue damage. Shafts were made from birch or pine wood, fletched with goose or swan feathers, and nocked with horn or antler. Quivers held 20 to 30 arrows and were often decorated with intricate carvings. Viking archers provided crucial support in naval battles, where their elevated position on ships gave them clear fields of fire. They also served as skirmishers before main battle lines engaged, weakening enemy formations with volleys of arrows. The effectiveness of Viking archery is demonstrated in sagas and archaeological evidence from battlefield sites. Specialized weapons. Beyond the common weapons, Vikings employed several specialized tools of war. The otgir, a type of halberd or glaive, combines spear point with axe blade for versatile combat options. These weapons appeared primarily in the later Viking Age and were associated with elite warriors. Warhammers, though less common than axes, provided armor-crushing capability against heavily armored opponents. The concentrated force of a hammer blow could dent or penetrate mail armor more effectively than cutting weapons. Archaeological examples show both single-handed and two-handed variants. Exotic and traded weapons. Slings, while simple, were effective ranged weapons that required no metal components. Viking slingers could hurl stones with deadly accuracy and force, making them valuable in siege warfare and naval combat. The weapons were particularly useful during raids, where ammunition could be gathered locally. Some Vikings employed exotic weapons acquired through trade or conquest. Frankish swords, Byzantine spears, and even Eastern European sabers found their way into Scandinavian hands through the extensive Viking trade networks that stretched from Greenland to Constantinople. These weapons didn't just conquer territory, they shaped European history for 3 centuries. From the practical axe to the prestigious sword, each weapon served specific roles in Viking society and warfare. The combination of superior metallurgy, practical design, and warrior culture made Viking weapons legendary. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Viking warfare, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. We're covering medieval weapons, tactics, and military history every week. Drop a comment about which weapon you'd want to wield in battle, and I'll see you in the next video.